Picnic at Hanging Rock is a novel written by the Australian writer John Lindsay, published for the first time ever in 1967. A film with the same name also has been adapted from it, subtitled The Long Deadly Afternoon in the Italian version. It portrays the Australian aristocratic society of a wealthy Victorian all-female college in 1100. Lady Lindsay was born as John A. Beckett Pygel in St Kilda East in the Australian state of Victoria as the third daughter of Terry Beckett and Anne-Sophie Pygel. She was an artist by background because of a maternal branch of the family, and she was also the heir of one of the most artistically influential and productive Australian families. After having successfully studied at some of the most renowned grammar schools and the most prestigious Australian art academies, she married Terry Lindsay in St. Valentine's Day in 1922. Her husband, Justice John Lindsay, was the descendant from a family of writers and artists. Lady Lindsay fought in her whole life for the protection and enhancement of the historical and artistic inheritance of the Australian culture, not only from the point of view of humanities, but also from a scientific one, as she was a careful observer who related the botanical species native to her continent, that were not always classified. She was also among the first Australian intellectual personalities of English origin who have illustrated the richness of the Aboriginal culture through a sociocultural analysis politically and ethnically correct, that is to say, the same way through which culture and societies would have been examined by those who in a later time would have been called the Australianists. Despite her good intentions, she had to face the economically disadvantaged period following the Great Depression, especially in its early years of marriage, which were in marked contrast to the sumptuous epoch of the accession to the throne of England's Queen Victoria, the time where the work in question is set. That was an important age for the English-speaking countries, characterized by hypocrisy and repression. Picnic at Hanging Rock was the most famous work by John Lindsay. It was written in form of a false document, skillfully narrated in order to resemble a true story, beginning and ending respectively with a pseudo-historic prologue and an epilogue. Even though Hanging Rock is an existing geological formation of volcanic origin situated on the side of Mount Macedon, people and events are fictional. The writer has often denied that she was inspired by current events. It is also worth mentioning the danger represented by the ridge of a hanging rock, the only rock in the world consisting of a single monolith and characterized by multiple sharp rises resembling a mountain range, dotted with towers of Gothic castles. The film adaptation of Peter Vai holds a substantial correspondence with the novel. The story begins with a trip offered by the all-female college Appleyard to their students on Valentine's Day 1900. The main characters in the work are the beautiful and sunny Miranda, the frivolous Emma, and the intelligent and precocious Marion, the bad and silly Edith, and Sarah, the youngest girl of the college. Among the adult women there are Mrs. Appleyard, the gruff headmistress, Mademoiselle de Poitiers, the kind and graceful teacher of French and dance, and finally Miss McCraw, the serious and detached maths teacher. Both the film and the novel immediately highlights the existential fragility of the girls, who despite their material wealth are completely inadequate for a confrontation with an environment other than their own artificial microcosm. John Lindsay has described many times the ineffectiveness of the Victorian education system, who relegated women to a life of repression, both they were middle-class exponents and aristocracy ones. Once they arrived to the north of Melbourne, the place where Hanging Rock is located, Miranda, Irma, and Marion mysteriously disappear, as well as Mrs. McCraw, and they will never be found again. The only extent is Sarah, the girl secretly in love with Miranda and unaware sister of the groom of his savior, a minor character. In both Vai's film and the Lindsay's writing, there are many metaphors. The Appleyard College, a metaphor for the institutional monolith that really weighs on the existence of the female students. Midday, the hour in which the clocks of every character stopped, playing a watershed role. Indeed, after midday, the nature, cheerful and accommodating as it is described, ceased to be so, to become something hostile, bizarre and misleading. In Lindsay's work, in fact, the real protagonist is landscape, portrayed as demoniac and alienating. It is curious to observe how nature intends to symbolize the metaphor of life and the unknown. The girls are ethereal and too perfect to remain trapped in their corsets. So they start climbing the rock in a desperate, introspective exploration to discover what is new, what is different, and what is wild. But above all, to achieve their sexual awareness, which was always stifled. Climbing is instead not only the desire for freedom and challenge, but also an allegory of the ascent towards annihilation of the suspension in the purifying universe. According to other interpretation in these works, the culture is opposed to the nature, representing respectively the eros and thanatos. In fact, climbing the monolith could be a metaphor for the journey toward death and despair, or the metaphysical end, an idea supported by Mrs. Appleyard's landmark quote, "Everything begins and everything ends at exactly the right time and place." The death of the Virgin, among other things, might be a comparison between pagan culture, to which Aboriginal religions are ascribable, and the ascension theories of the monotheistic religions such as Christianity. Although the novel has several main characters and analyses of a history seen from the viewpoint of each of them, Miranda is the figure that stands out among all. She in fact is both victim and agent of chaos, as it pushes her friends to climb stealthily the hanging rock by convincing even Sarah, who would be willing to do anything to follow her on the monolith. The disappearance of the girls will impact all the people which came into contact with them. Sarah, always targeted by Mrs. Appleyard because of its humble origins, once lost her friends and after having known that she shall have to return to the orphanage from which she came, commits suicide without having known his brother. Mrs. Appleyard also shall die. In the film, she commits suicide because of the guilt due to both the disappearance of the girls and due to the fact that she always mistreated Sarah, whereas in the novel, after having become an alcoholist, whilst climbing the hanging rock and thinking about the sad events of the three girls and Sarah, she stumbles and plummets to death. This unique classic of the Australian literature is considered Lindsay's masterpiece. This book has proved to be successful throughout generations because it possesses the winning formula to captivate the audience, thanks to its descriptive and narrative style, always in balance with the dream dimension and the sense of perpetual mystery. It has also given rise to many speculations about the end of the girls, since the story was deliberately left unresolved.
Siate prudenti e badate a comportarvi in modo da dare lustro al collegio.